Welcome, welcome, welcome. Biz Dev Live with Cameron Toth. I am queuing up the brand new theme song. I was in awesome conversation with Kyle Steele here, and I fell behind on it. So give me one moment. Here we go.
I gotta hear this.
Weekdays at 11 Eastern Time, Biz Dev Live. Weekdays at 11 Eastern Time, Biz D with C. Brought to you by Cameron T. Biz D with C. Brought to you by Cameron T.
Okay.
This is business development, not even selling it. This is intelligent. If you watch it, I promise you benefit. Leadership and motivation, empathy and inspiration. Leadership and motivation, empathy and inspiration. Biz Dev Live, weekdays at 11 Eastern Time. Biz Dev Live, weekdays at 11 Eastern Time. Biz D with C, brought to you by Cameron T. Biz D with C, brought to you by Cameron T.
Man, that's nice.
Not too bad, right?
No, did you do that?
Yeah, so we took care of it. We hooked it up. So I want to introduce everybody. Thanks for hanging through that point. I'm really proud of that intro. So definitely want to be. Kyle, Christian Steele's mission is to help people find and fearlessly move into the power of their unique story. He accomplishes through his work in entrepreneurship, community building, technology, education, and family. He kept his intro really, really short. I don't know when we first connected, but I've been just sort of on the periphery looking at all the things you do from afar and admiring. Yeah. I'm really looking forward to getting into all the stuff you did. I was reading through the website the other day. You've been involved with so much, and I know that you have created so much. So I really want to do a deep dive into that. Yeah. I'd love to start just so that people have a base and understanding of like where you came from and how you got motivated to do the work you do. I'd like to dig back into the story a little bit and start there. So can you tell us a little bit about your education, how you got motivated to get educated? I know I saw everything on there from regular schooling to like dental services. Like, so talk to us all through that, and give us some background.
It was I'm from Detroit, Michigan, and I grew up halfway in both half the time in Detroit and the other half in Northern Virginia, right outside of Washington, D.C., in this little town called Reston, which is actually a big town now. And when I graduated from high school, I went to the school called Virginia Military Institute, which was an all-male state military college in Virginia. And then actually got kicked out of there. Was also playing football, but got kicked out of there. And end up transferring to the school called Bethune-Cookman, which is a historically Black college down in Daytona Beach, Florida. Graduated from there, and then went out into the world. And then from that point, decided I was going to go, because I wanted to go to dental school. And so I got accepted into this fellowship at the University of Michigan. At the end of it, I decided that's not what I wanted to do. And that's where I decided, I said, okay, I'm really interested in just building things. And so the best place for me to start was this internship that gave me kind of an insight into all the aspects of business.
What was the internship?
It was just like a management training program at this company that was like a supplier up in Michigan. And so they kind of like circulated you around to each individual department. And so it was there where I really got the first understanding of how like business operates, and that it was this organism, and that each component of the organism had to function and behave in a certain way for it to work, right? Like there was marketing, there was operations, there was finance, there was sales, there was all these pieces. And I was like, oh, this is really interesting. And then to really understand how they all connected, which would appeal to me because I was a science major. And really the thing about science that was interesting to me was how the relationship between things, and how that organism or thing operated at its best when everything was flowing, right? So business, although I had a science degree, like business to me it became like having that science degree and that kind of mind became like it was a natural thing for me to really get interested in business and more particularly just entrepreneurship and just startups, So
Yeah.
so that's kind of like, like this. So the other part of the question was like, what motivated me? And it was really just trying to understand, like looking back in my life and just saying, okay, well, here's what my life consists of. And the question was like, what am I supposed to be doing with my time here? Like I just felt like the work I was doing just didn't feel like very meaningful. And I was like, okay, what am I supposed to be doing? So, part of that exercise is like looking back in my life and understanding my own story, right? And as I started looking at it, I started coming up with these themes, and I started to see these themes, right? Like things felt random and disconnected, but when you look at them across in their totality, all what I found was like, oh no, there's some patterns here. Like I gravitate to things, and here's the reason why, and all that kind of stuff. And so then so after that work, then I came up with that line, which was to help people find and fearlessly move into the power of their unique story, which is then the banner that I use. Like whereas with a business would use like their call, right? Like so I use that banner to say, here's how I bring value to the world, and then it helps me direct what's good work and what's not good work, right?
And let's fast forward for a second, because I want to get back into some of the other experiences you have.
Yeah.
But for those that don't know you, what are you doing right now? Talk to us about the couple of projects. I want to talk more about it, but just so people have sort of an established.
Yeah. So I mean, I have a few hats which I call them tools that help me live out that mission that I just spoke about. The first one is that I'm a partner in a co-working space down here. It's about a 19,000 square foot facility. We got about 160 co-workers, and it's here in Orlando, Florida. And our whole goal
is that Credo?
Credo Conduit. And so that for me, that's we look at this place as a society made up of individuals and companies who believe, and this is the important part for us, who believe that their work and lives get better when they come alongside of each other. So we, as a co-working space, we really resist being transactional. We put actually a couple of hurdles in our process of even bringing people on. Like no one can just give us a check and just get a desk. And right. So, yeah, that's it. So, and so for us, like it's about the relationship and although that's a harder way to do business, it's for us, it's a better way to do business, like very relational.
So I want to come back to this. So I want to talk about the different hats, but I definitely want to come back and talk about conduit.
Yeah.
Just the idea of how do you partner, how do you, finance, all that kind of stuff on the business development side. I really want to get into, but I know, I also want to talk about the educational hats that you're wearing and whatnot.
Right.
So let's talk a little bit about that.
Okay. You want me to talk about that, or you want me to?
So I want to come back to because we're definitely going to talk about it, but I want to talk about the different things that you're doing. So talk to me about the other things you're doing as well.
Yeah. So the other thing is, I'm also a program director of a social enterprise accelerator called Rally. So Rally for us we work with early stage social entrepreneurs. So social entrepreneur, as we define it, is people who are trying to solve a social, economic, or environmental issue, but are using the principles of free market capitalism, right? And so they definitely have a motivation to earn money to make the business sustainable, but that's not it. The other part, the thing that pushes that motivation forward, is the need to solve the social issue. So we have this social enterprise accelerator where we work with early stage companies to help bring their ideas and existing work into sustainable ventures that create positive social change.
I got the right website, right?
Yeah, that's it. That's a brand new one we just launched.
That's beautiful.
Yeah. And so, yeah, I mean, that work, I mean, we've been doing that since 2017, and we bring in fellows who are, like I said, these early stage social entrepreneurs locally, nationally, internationally. I mean, we have people from Kenya. We recently just closed out a class with a lady who was who's a Syrian refugee who lives in Turkey. Is currently living in Turkey, and she's dealing with mental health issues, or helping those women access mental health issues. And then I have I'm also the program. I'm sorry, not the program director. Pitch Fest director and also a board member of a group called FETC, which is the Future of Education Technology Conference, which is actually the largest conference for K-12, tech conference for K-12 educators in the United States. And there, you know, being on the board, you know, one of my things is to make sure that all students have access to the technologies that's being displayed, right? Talking about the disadvantage. But then as a Pitch Fest director, like I'm working with early stage ed tech companies, and we're curating them and giving them an opportunity to be able to pitch during the event, which is attended by anywhere from 17,000, 20,000 educators and decision makers in education. And so that's been a really cool experience for me also to be involved.
So listen, Kyle, I want to be you when I grow up. I mean, this stuff, I mean, you know, the equity capital kind of stuff that you're doing.
Yeah.
The large event stuff. I mean, these are all spaces that, you know, I live in and around and got on the goal thing. So, you know, I really want to do a deep dive into some of this stuff. So I know we were talking about the history. So I think that provided a little bit of context for you know, the lead up. So you have this educational background, everything from military to, did I get that right? The dental services piece was on there too?
Yeah, well, yeah, I had a dental fellowship at the University of Michigan, right? So, which
just
I'm not a dentist at all.
I think we were talking about this before we went on live. Well seasoned, right? I mean,
well seasoned, right?
Yes, indeed. So you got this educational thing. You went into this internship. You were learning about business. You're in the D, right? Talk to us how you got into some of these initiatives that you started doing, because I know education has been a big, huge piece of your piece all along. We didn't even talk about your own website that. I'll throw that up on the screen. So if anybody wants to know a little bit more about Kyle, you can go to kylesteele.com.
Kyle C. Steele.
Say again?
Yes, Kyle C. Steele.
Kyle C. Steele. Oh, sorry, my bad.
Yeah.
kylesteele.com. And you can read more about the awesome stuff that he's involved in, the boss photos, all that good stuff, right? Really, really, I mean, I enjoyed the personal branding aspect of this alone. People can take that away from your story. You're hitting a lot of the right notes, just, you know, for someone like myself to be able to enter in and see what's going on, right? You know, it was fairly easy. And I think, you know, if we're entrepreneurs, if we're trying to personally brand ourselves within the corporate world, you know, there's a lot of lessons to be learned from you. So what do you want to tackle first? What are you most interested in diving into?
You know, I think, because the question is like, how did I get, that you asked was, how did I get where I am today? And I think that when I met you back in, I think it was 2014, 15 up in New York.
Yeah.
I was
Taxi Talk, right?
Yeah, it was like some event.
Liz King's Taxi
Talk.
Liz
King, right?
Shout out to Liz and
right. And so I had started a company that got funded previously that was dealing in helping event organizers extract some data about understanding who the attendees were and what they were consuming, right? And so I was building that company, but simultaneously I was working on it wasn't a nonprofit at the time, but I was helping kids learn how to code. And I was doing it in a way that was like unique, where instead of like saying, hey, you should learn coding because it's cool, I was saying like, okay, I can use coding specifically with these elementary kids as a tool to help them improve their reading, their learning, their thinking skills. And so I wrapped into this process where I gave them a story, they would draw the story, then they would use the code to turn it into animation. And so I was doing that work, and it was very, very fulfilling. And I was doing it in a school that was a disadvantaged school. So like 25% of the kids were homeless, and about 75 or really 80% of the kids were low income, right? 25% of the kids, like 1 out of 4 kids, were just like homeless. And so that work to me felt very meaningful, because reading literacy is everything for them. And then sooner or later, I became dissatisfied with the other company, and I was like, I'd rather do this work. And so I was doing that work for a while. And then one of my mentors, is still a mentor of mine right now, John Rivers of Four Rivers Barbecue down here. He was like, listen, you can make money in this. Like, you think that it's a bad thing. Like, the business you could turn this into a business, make it sustainable. And I listened to that advice and I turned a corner on there, right?
Yeah. Let's deep dive into that, because that's how I, set this talk up today, because I've been working in this nonprofit, on this nonprofit for the last 24 years, and we've done amazing work.
Yeah.
We've definitely, I'm always careful. I don't want to take credit for anybody doing good in life, but I know that our pushing, our providing of information, our ability to offer opportunities to students and giving them that option to say yes to it has definitely made people's lives better and impacted people's lives.
Right.
That being said, we still do not have sustainable funding for the program because we haven't mastered the business of this nonprofit world and education in general. So talk to us about that, because I think that's some place where you've been really successful and maybe have something that you can share with folks on how to build that out and really give a blueprint for folks to follow.
Yeah, I mean, I think you hit it right on the nose. Like, with a nonprofit, although the meaning and the intent behind the work is to do good. Unfortunately, most of the time of the nonprofit gets caught up into fundraising, right? And you're becoming dependent on donors or grant dollars that are very specific, right? They say, like, we're funding you to do this specific program. And what happens is, and I experienced this myself. So what happens is, like, I didn't want to be out there I want to be doing the real work, having a real impact. Yeah. I didn't want to spend 80% of my time fundraising, right? So that was one of the things tensions I felt. And then the other thing is that as we got in grant dollars, like, I had this huge donor who wanted me to do programming in a very specific way. And initially that was the way that was right. But as I learned through the process, I realized it wasn't the best way. Like, this wasn't producing the outcomes and having the impact that I wanted. And so as I tried to pivot out of there, they were like, no. Like we funded this work. And so nonprofits oftentimes get caught in that trap where they are doing work that has very limited impact. They know it, but to keep the funding going, they continue to do the work. And so it's good money going to an idea that's bringing less value to the world. And that's just the traditional problem I feel with nonprofits. And so one of the things that I'm a believer in, because I'm involved in, is what's called the social enterprise, right? So social enterprise is a hybrid of a nonprofit and a for-profit company. And so they have an underlying mission to do goods socially, right? So social mission, right? Or economic or environmental mission, right? But it's that mission is brought to life through a for-profit structure where they have an incentive to put a product out into the marketplace that people want. And inherently what happens is that as people buy that product, the impact on the social side, it also increases with it, right? And so I think that for me, like, or what I would recommend is that I think it's a benefit. Like, when you're forced to create a product and maximize and continue to innovate and bring value, like, I think that's inherently better for a nonprofit, right? And so I would say, for nonprofits, it's like, like, I know it's a good model, and a lot of nonprofits do a very good work, but I do understand its limitations. But I would also say, think about trying to figure out what the revenue stream, like, is there a revenue stream in the business? So my business partner, for example, has a coffee shop that there's a few of them. They're called Downtown Credo, where it originally started off as a nonprofit, but he didn't rely on donors where he had to go on and fundraise. What he did was he just sold a great cup of coffee built that was made with beans that he had a relationship with. He could tell with the growers. He could tell a cool story around it. The way they made coffee was very, very good, and people bought it. But that purchase was actually a donation, right? So, like, and it was name your own price. So it's like, I'm gonna give you $5 or $10 for this coffee, because they really like the mission. and then they liked the product, right? And he ran it that way for a long, long time. But then all of a sudden, he started earning so much money that he was forced to change his designation to what's called a B Corp here in Florida, which is a hybrid of both a nonprofit and a for-profit company, right? And so, so I would say, like, like if you
that's a whole other interesting conversation in itself around the business and the background accounting of it, because, when somebody starts a nonprofit, I care about providing meals for high school students. I want them to eat fresh. I want to teach them how to, cook their own meals. Let's get this processed food out of it. That's great. How do you pay for it? How do you go through the regulation part of it? Dealing with all the insurance pieces of it. Like, these are all the things you start out wanting to do good, and you can get beat in the head because now the tax man's coming after you, the insurance man's coming after you, and all these pieces of it, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's you're absolutely right. Like, so the original intent around doing something good, as you start doing the work of becoming successful, inherently, and for good reasons, right? Like regulations and things, you start bumping up against that. And then
because good intentions doesn't mean that you're doing something good.
Yeah, I mean, so I know, I don't have to name names, but I know that there are organizations, nonprofits, who the initial intent was good, right? But because they're large and they're so reliant on the donor base, like, what's when you really peel back and you say, are they really having an impact in the area that they say that they're addressing, or are they just doing band-aids, right? And so that becomes a real conversation, right? Like, that you have to have. And so those there are nonprofits who say, you know what, we're providing 100 meals to people who are hungry, and we're doing a great job, a day, right? But the reality is those people are still hungry the next day. So are you really solving the problem of hunger just by providing them simply a meal, right? And so I think that with the social enterprise model that I'm used to working with, it forces you to think about, are you really having an impact? And the tool that we use in order to help those entrepreneurs who are interested in those kind of things is, there's two tools that we use. One is called a social lean business model canvas, which it starts off, it's like the traditional lean business model canvas where it talks about, problem, solution, customer. But this, the very top of it it starts off with purpose and mission, right? And so because it's a social enterprise, right? So it has to have a purpose and has to have a mission and impact. So the social lean business model canvas. The other thing that we work with is called a document called a theory of change, right? So a theory of change is this model of saying, okay, well, here we know that the world should look this way, but it looks like this, right? And so how do we get where the world looks today to where we imagine that it should be, right?
Right.
And so the theory of change helps you think through that process and base it in like real science and come up with real metrics that really determine outcome.
If somebody wants to go and look more at that theory change kind of thing, is there a website that they can go to, or?
Well, I'm trying to think if it's posted on Rally, the Rally SEA that site.
Okay. Well, maybe if there isn't, we can write.
Or they can just reach out to me. I have the documents, right? And I'll be more than happy to share it. I mean, like, you can look up a theory of change. You can look up a social lean business model canvas online. Like, it's open source, right?
Sure.
So you can look at those things. But when you take those two documents, especially the theory of change, what's interesting about it is that as you come up with where the world is and you move down the line to where you want it to be, and you come up with, okay, what are the things that allow us to do this work, that may prevent us to do this work, and then what are the metrics and things that we want to quantify and calculate and watch to make sure that we're having impact. The interesting thing is the business fits right up in the middle of it, and so you can put the business in there, and if the business is now producing the outcomes that you want, you can take it out. It doesn't destroy the overall model of the theory of change if you remove the business out, right? And so I really like that because it allows you to pivot, right? As you say, oh, we're not having the impact that we wanted, we can change it up and let's see if this works, right? And you just keep stuffing stuff up in there until you find something that works, right?
Well, that's why I think, the power of like the billionaire nonprofit, because exactly what you're talking about, for somebody, and you could argue the effective, nature of a billionaire's nonprofit, but nobody can dictate their direction because they're saying, I have the money and it's self-funded and done, right? So that idea that I'm going to build something, I'm funding it, and we understand and control the direction of it. The most recent thing that I've watched that sort of comes to mind is I forget the name of his schools, but LeBron James's schools.
Oh yeah,
Cleveland. Just that idea, like, we have this idea, we have this way, we're going to go after these students that aren't taken care of by the system, and we're going to go at it in a way. Obviously, they got to follow rules for education, but nobody can tell them, in terms of the way the building looks and he's funding it. It's done.
Right. Yeah. I think the sooner as a nonprofit, if you can become less reliant on donors and grants that typically come in that are very specific, right? That you can't go outside these parameters. The sooner you can do that, the sooner it allows you to it allows you to innovate, to spend more time innovating, really understanding and studying, like seeing if the work that you're doing is really having the impact, and if not, then it gives you the freedom to be able to change it up, right? And so, like, I'm a big advocate of nonprofits shifting or trying to identify an earned income stream. Yeah,
we're trying to focus right now on our. Thanks, Glow, for checking in, and I appreciate it. Says good stuff. And Michelle, fellow event planner, social.
Oh media. Yeah, hey Michelle, I haven't seen her in a while. We live in the same.
Yeah, she was saying hi. I threw it up there earlier. So, with soundbiz.org, for example, we're trying to get the alumni organized. There's a ton of alumni, so we want to create some sustainable funding from them. But in terms of what you're talking about, something that I've been thinking about a long time is, we could put together educational products that would be really useful to teachers all over the country, but we got to package it up. We got to do it and put it out there so that it's available. I know there's even like teacher services that pay teachers for materials. We just haven't done it. So it's a matter of getting to that and utilizing the resources that are available to us. For folks that are maybe on the younger side, or maybe they're in that position where they're this is a great idea, I want to create a nonprofit, I want to create the business model that allows me to self-fund it. What would you say are the most important things that they should be looking at in terms of forming a business plan or getting the idea off the ground?
Yeah, I think entrepreneurship is extremely hard. Right. I mean, you and I both know this. Building a business is hard. It's not an easy thing. And that's why most people just don't do it. And I think that to start off with some kind of purpose or mission that's driving the business is very important, because when it gets hard, that's the thing that'll keep you going. And if you don't have that, then it's not going to keep you going. And so I think that understanding, identifying as an individual, like, what is your mission? What is your purpose? Understanding that first before you start the business is important. And then, so once you find that, it's in like, okay, let's get into a business that you understand that serves that purpose and that mission, but then also a business that you understand. So don't just like, if you're not an attorney, don't go off and start trying to sell attorney products, right? Like, it just doesn't make sense. So I like to say, just stay in your lane. Like, certain things, you have certain insights on things, and so stay with those things. And so like, once you identify that, then it becomes a matter of just really understanding the fundamentals of business, of building the business. And so the lean business, like, I don't believe that you have to do a business plan. I think that that's pretty old school to do 40 pages, because the business is constantly shaping. So what document or vehicle can you use that will help you stay focused and navigate down the changes of the business? And that's why I like the lean business model canvas, because it puts it out there very graphically for you, where you can start filling in the blanks, like understand how the connections are made. Like, who's my customer? What problem are they having? Am I developing a solution that addresses this problem? Okay, if I am, what does that product look like? what are the channels that customer sits in? How much am I going to charge them? Who are my competitors out there? What are my revenue streams? What are my costs, right? What are my expenses? So understanding, going through that document or filling out that document is a really important thing. And as things change, you can go in and erase and get rid of stuff. So I just think that anybody who's starting a business should, one, understand clearly that it's hard. Two, be passionate, truly passionate about it, and have a passion, because that's what's going to drive them through when it gets hard. Three,
is this what you're talking about on the lean business?
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, I interrupted. Go ahead. You were saying,
no.
Let's go back to the first
document. So like, and like the one that we use has numbers, and it takes you through because, and so like I said, like to my other point was like doing this work, right? Because this is what keeps you out of trouble. This helps you to see all that stuff, right? And so, and to understand how they're all connected, right? Like, if you haven't really figured out who your customer is, then how good is your solution going to be? Or how, like, do you really understand their problem? And if if you don't really understand their problem, can you really develop a solution that has value that they're willing to pay you for, right? And to continue paying you for. And if you don't understand who your competitors are, how do you create barriers to fight off attacks from them, right? And if you don't understand your cost structure, you could be delivering this product in a way where it's not profitable, right? And so I think that business model canvas really helps you focus on the fundamentals. And if you can do that business model canvas, fill it out and be diligent about it, and do it right, then you are more likely to succeed than someone who's just kind of freewheeling and moving about aimlessly, right? Just doing things off the cuff.
Right. I love that. So that's a great tool. So I just looked it up. Maybe you'll share that with the one that you use, but leanstack.com, lean canvas, very cool. So it gives a little bit of a channel. I'm sorry, I jumped in. I got excited that I found the document.
No, that's good. I'm glad you found it.
I interrupted you in the middle of listing it out. So I know people are going to be like, why did he stop him from So anyways, that's awesome. I think that's helpful. I think because so often, especially as educators, and I definitely, even though I don't have the formal education, I think of myself as an educator first and a business person second. And that's where my passion lies for sure, right. Education. But the business side, the actual fundraising side is such a difficult thing for me. So getting that down and having resources and people like you in your network that actually understand that, I think it's a huge value. So talk to us about some of these other business initiatives that you've gotten into. I'm assuming you use this Lean Stag model with the Rally organization and the Teach.
I use that. I mean, I use it really in all of the stuff, the work that I do, right? Because it's just good. Like it's a living document. It's not you're not supposed to do it, just sit on the shelf. You're supposed to do it and continue to revisit it, right? As you look at the business. And so like for me, business is very interesting because it's like science. It's like I'm just trying to get the components to work right? Because for me, like what I was just telling my business partner this the other day, like I've never cared about scaling big business, right? Like having the $1 billion business. Like if I got a $1 billion business, great. What I really care about is maximizing and people getting the fullest value out of what I'm offering them, right? And so I'm constantly like looking at that, right? Like, am I delivering, maximizing the value for this person? And so for me, looking at how I operate the business and being very disciplined on it is important because if I don't do that, then I'm dropping value off the table. If I don't run the co-working space right and look at how my cost structures and making sure that they stay in line, then all of a sudden 160 people who come here and have an environment where they can be at peace and know they can rely on to build their business, all of a sudden that falls apart, right? And so like that doesn't feel good to me, right? So that's why, like for me, like I really love the nuances of operating a business, because at the end of it, I know that there's people who have lives and families and dreams that are dependent on me doing this well, right? So yeah, I mean, so, you know, like the other things I do, you know, like you know, I do some educational programming where, you know, I consult with K-12 educators around coding. And that's just you know, like a consulting model, right? Where I know, for example, that educators or in K-12, one of the primary questions is like, what do we do with this coding thing? And so the way that they're doing it, I believe, or going about doing it, is fundamentally wrong, right? Where they're positioning coding as like, you need to learn coding because it's a tool and it's the future and it's jobs. And yeah, I get why they talk that way, but I think that the place in the value proposition there is wrong. And so what I do is I go into these organizations and I say, hey, that's cool, but let me show you how to make this really relevant and sustainable. And I help them build programs around the right things. So use coding as a tool to improve elementary kids' reading literacy skills, right? And here's how you can do this. And so now, you know, understand, like, okay, because they're trying to drive coding down to elementary kids. Elementary kids don't care anything about jobs, right? Or the future. Like, they just thinking about now and maybe next week when they go to work. Right.
I'm trying to get my kids understanding, like, you not only should you care about the job in the future, but, you know, I mean, it's a totally different world. You know, when we were in elementary, you know, and getting into middle school, you know, with what we do on the parenting for my 13-year-old, my 12-year-old. So as they hit 11, they're getting their first phone. That's just the age that we've decided as they go into middle school. Like, you know, things are more in terms of education, and we have rules around the technology, but we're giving them the technology not just because, oh, we got to get in touch, but I want them to utilize it so they learn how to use this stuff. And ideally, you know, like I gave my 9-year-old baseball cards. I said, you're going to have to pay for these baseball cards if you don't sell them.
Right.
You're going to have to pay for these baseball cards if you don't sell them. If you sell them, you don't have to pay me anything. If you don't sell them, you owe me money, right?
Yeah.
So get the idea, like, listen, you know, this is something he chose to do that. I didn't set him on that mission. He said he wanted to do it. So I let him go off. So that, you know, he gets that experience. So he's looking up stuff. He's putting a spreadsheet together. My 13-year-old, she's into the crafts. She's doing stuff. My 11-year-old, he's doing art. So you can go to leototh.com. He's got an art website. So now it's like, how do we monetize that, right? So getting students familiar with the idea of, like, you don't have to wait until you're out into the career world, just along the lines of what we're talking about. You want to pay for your education. You don't want to go into debt. Learn how to save money and build revenue now.
Yeah. And I think what you said there is when you described the different experiences with your children, the key is that they're learning based off of something that they like. There's something primarily motivation that they want, and you're using that as a catalyst for learning, right? And so when I talk about, you know, coding, and I go to these K-12 administrators and I say, like, here, you need to reposition coding, you know, in a way that makes sense. So in the elementaries, K-5, like, kids aren't thinking about jobs. They're not thinking about the future. So coding to them, you talk about coding, their eyes will glass over, right? Maybe a few students will like it because they're nerds or whatever, or just geeks like that, like I was. But that's it. And then teachers aren't trained on it. And they're like, well, I'm just trying to teach these kids how to read. Like, that's my primary job in elementary. So I've studied this problem enough to know, and have done this long enough to know that how to position coding correctly to these administrators. And so I say, like, look, you can use coding. You want it to be sustainable. You want it to be meaningful and useful, but you have to position it around reading skills, right? And here's how you do it. This is what the program looks like. This is how it should operate. Here's how the objectives. Here's the impact. Here's the outcomes. This is how you should do it. And these are the tools that you should use. And these are the ones you shouldn't use. And so I go into that. I go into them. I tell them how to do that. And then they pay me for it. Right. Because they're spending thousands and not thousands, millions of dollars on tools, computers, and they're putting them into these computer centers, and the computers are sitting there, and the only thing that they're doing, the computers being used for, is to play what's the game with the block guys rolling around, Minecraft. Oh. so they're using it like for games.
My son was in the Roblox. I had to take him off of that because it was getting too crazy. But there are ways to really get kids into it. So my 9-year-old, they got him into this thing where he was coding dance videos.
Right.
So it was using little animal emoticons, and so he got really into it because he was able to do the music with the design, and code the whole thing. So he was loving it.
Right. I mean, it was fun for him, right? So it was so, and that's the motivation for the kids. It's like around something that they want, and it's fun for them, right? And so when I like I said, when I look at business, it is all about really studying what the consumer or the customer, who the customer is, and what their motivations are, and really then ranking those motivations, right? And saying, what's the most important thing for them? So when I went into the classroom originally to sell my coding program, I used to say, oh, like, it's the future, and it's this, and then elementary principals would be like, I mean, we want to teach our kids reading. Like, that's the most important thing. And they kept saying that over and over again, and they weren't buying my product or service. And then I said to myself, you know what? I got to reposition the way I talk about this.
Yes.
And so I need to figure out how to make coding work for what they want, right? And so then that's when I reframed it from like, oh, it's coding in the future, to, oh no, I can help improve your students' reading skills using coding as a tool, coding, storytelling, and art, by combining those two together. And then it would go, really? And then all of a sudden I would tell it to teachers, and they were like, wait, you can help improve my kids' reading skills? And by the way, like, the district is talking about this coding thing, and you've created a way to make that happen in my classroom simultaneously. Okay, tell me more about that. And then from that point, all of a sudden I had these every principals, signing contracts with me. And actually I got in trouble with Orange County Public Schools for doing this. But the principals signed contracts and took money out of their budget to pay me to do this kind of program. And that's when I was like, ding, 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 like, I got it. And that's always a reminder to me that you got to be in tune with what your people want and listen to them, right? Just listen, put it out there, see how they respond, and listen to them, and then make those adjustments. And if you do that, you'll be fine. But if you just continue running down the track that coding is the future for elementary kids, like, I would have been dead in water a long time ago.
Yeah, I think nonprofits, and especially folks that have the good intention, they get frustrated because of exactly what you're talking about. They have something good, they want to pitch it. They want to do this fantastic thing. It's going to help. It's going to help. It's going to help. But they don't know how to position what they're going to do for the people that they're talking to. So having that ability to listen to people and understand what the needs are, and how to, you know what your mission is, what your goal, how it can help those other things as well. But it's a positioning statement of like, am I just going to talk about what I want to talk about, or do I want to actually listen to them and gear it to them?
Yeah. That's so important that you said that, because oftentimes nonprofits, they fall into the trap of telling this story around like it's like the classic, I'll show you some kids with flies in their eyes, and as a result, you'll pay me money because you feel sorry for them. That is, that is the wrong, I think I shouldn't say the wrong way, but it's not a sustainable model, because how many times can you keep showing me the same kid over and over again? I'm like, man, will you like get the flies out the kid's eye? Like, why do you like often this problem should go away if you're doing this, right? So I think the challenge becomes, how do you have to transition as a nonprofit from telling stories about like the conditions of these things and how sad it is, to like how you have developed a process, what the world should look like, or how those conditions should be, and you can articulate how you're going to move them through there and get them to that point, right? So from this low point to this higher point, you can articulate that. And so when you tell a story that way, it resonates on funders differently, because it's not only a heart story, but then it becomes a mind story, right? And it's like, oh, you appeal to them in all ways. Like, okay, they got a solid plan. I like that plan. And so if you're a nonprofit and you can talk about the strategy on, how you get these kids from this condition or this thing from this condition to this condition, then I think that makes a world of difference in your ability to raise funds, right, and be sustainable.
Yeah, it's the value offer, right?
Yeah.
What are you doing to actually change somebody's life versus we serve homeless kids, we serve hungry kids. Okay, but how are you changing that? Just like
right. Like, how do you get them out of the shelter, right?
Yeah.
Like, they keep coming back there day after day. But you're providing them with we're providing them with food every day, but they are still hungry every day. That's why you have to keep providing them food. Oh, we provide them with shelter every day. Okay, but like, what's the underlying conditions that are making them homeless? Like, really, you should be solving that, right?
No, and I think that applies across the board. Like right now, part of the solution with education, with schools being closed, is like, well, we're doing online learning, and then
oh man,
that's great.
Yeah.
And what are we doing about the difference between, okay, so somebody's tuning in from this household, they don't even have enough computers. Oh, you're giving them a computer, but that doesn't necessarily change the fact that, this kid over here has the dog in the lap, beautiful background, beautiful living room. And this kid over here, things are a little bit of a mess. Brother and sister, right. House doesn't look as nice. Right. That's not as positive. So, all these different challenges that come out, like how are you serving people? How are you bringing people to the same level, and all the different things that you talk about? Because that I hear very much when everybody is saying, oh, we've solved this problem. And I'm like,
Yeah. What you just said is that analogy that you walked through is really interesting to me because so I'm not an advocate. I'm not saying that you shouldn't give them a meal and you should provide a home.
Yeah, no, of course.
Or they don't have a computer, like they need a computer, or they don't have access to the internet. Let's figure out a way to get them access to the internet. So I'm not saying that you shouldn't do that. You should do that because you need that first step.
We don't need a Band-Aid when we're hurt, right?
Right. But you do need to stop the bleeding, right? So once you get that person stabilized, you give them a computer, you give them a home, you give them food, whatever. Then it's like very quickly you have to transition to the work to help them to become sustainable, right? And so then that's where the real work comes in. And I think that's what, my call is that nonprofits start moving, or should start moving there, right? That you have your triage where people come into the emergency room, you got to stabilize them.
Yeah, I think the piece, and I'd love to hear how you've done this. I just recently got exposed. I don't know if you've picked up this book at any point, The E-Myth by Michael Gerber.
Yeah.
Really good, because I wish I'd opened up that book 9 years ago when I started up Toth Event Staffing, but it also applies to the nonprofit thing. So they talk about like mapping out the positions and the growth for the company. So, you're marking out the positions before you even start the company, because, and I heard what you were saying before, and I don't necessarily want to be $1 billion business if it happens, but I think even just taking the steps to understand, okay, I'm going to build, a social leaning business. It has the business model there that we can self-fund and complete our mission. But what do we do as we get more successful, as we start winning contracts? Because you can't do everything. And I think this is the other thing, especially with, I don't know how my executive director for Sound Business has held up. He's done this thing for the last 30 years and completely involunteer, pulling money out of his pocket. I don't know how his wife lets him do it. It's just crazy. Yeah. Not everybody is going to do that. And I think most people are going to get beat down. This guy just happens to be a saint of a person, really. But, again, nobody's perfect. And he hasn't built a program that can exist without him being there. Right. Yeah. And I think that's where we all need to go so that these organizations can grow and do more good. So talk to me about what you've done, because obviously you're not doing it all yourself. You have business partners. You have different businesses that you're involved in. How are you able to manage these different pieces and not be exhausted? And correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like you still have ambition to do other things and get involved in other stuff. So talk to us about that.
Yeah, man. That's a very interesting question I've thought a lot about. And I get that answer. Like when I start telling people about the stuff I do, the first thing they do is they look at me like, how do you do all this?
Yeah.
Right. The reason why I'm able to do all this is because it's I've developed a mission, right? And all the work that I do, I look at it as tools that help me do the mission. So it's not that I'm the partner at the Credo Conduit, or I'm a program director at Rally, or I'm the Pitch Fest director and board member at FETC, or the founder of Learn Jelly. All those are titles, right? But really, I just look at them as these are just tools that I use, just like an accountant uses QuickBooks, email, a pencil, whatever, like all the tools that they use in order to perform their job. To me, the titles aren't the job. The job is to help people find and fearlessly move into the power of their unique story. That's the job. And these things are just simply tools. So the first thing is I look at it differently, right? Now, what I do is, what my habit is that I build the structures and infrastructures and spend a lot of time on trying to make sure those are there. And then the next thing I do is my job is to transition that off to someone else. And so so I'm very good at creating a structure and then getting people on the bench that I groom and make sure that they're good to go. And then I hand it off to them, and I have to be good at allowing them to hand it off to them, allowing them to run with the infrastructure that is there, and then have the ability, the confidence to modify that they see, to empower them to be able to modify it. And ultimately, the result is, are we staying true to the mission and delivering the value that we talk about overall? And so yes, it is absolutely being focused on a purpose. Or having a purpose. It's then driving all of my activity through that purpose because I care about it, and therefore I don't get tired because it's fun to me. Like, my work is fun, right? And it gets tough, but it's fun. And then the other thing is because all my work is mission driven, I spend time building up these infrastructures, making sure that it's solid, and then I humble myself and don't believe that I'm the person to keep this thing going. But because if I die tomorrow, all this falls apart, right? But I care about the mission because I know there's people attached to it, and I don't want it to fall apart. So I got to get really good at handing things off sooner versus later and creating redundancies. And so I have a young lady.
I got to have you talk to my executive director, because that's exactly what he needs to hear. So I'm sorry to interrupt. So talk about the redundancies.
Yeah. The redundancy is like so I have to be able to spot talent that I really like. So there's this one young lady who works for us. Who, my experience with her started a long time ago, and I recognized that she was really smart and that her values were aligned, that she was, and so I was trying to figure out opportunities to be able to work with her to continue to see how she was. And then I became really confident in who she was, right? And I liked her as an individual. And so as I'm trying to move, like, for example, the co-working space down the road, I'm thinking, like, sooner or later, like, I got to get somebody here to operate it, because I need to be doing other things. And I realized that the more I stay involved in the day-to-day of the co-working space, like, it's diminishing value. So I got to get somebody on the bench. And so I brought her in, and I handed everything over to her, and I empowered her to be able to make decisions. And I told her, like, just the other day, I was like, look, I know who I am. I know I can be strong and have opinions. And there's a lot of things about me that can be intimidating. But I want you to know that if you feel like something should be done better, you got to push on it. I'm gonna give you permission to do that, right? I may not agree with you, and you may have to fight it, but I want to empower you to be able to do that, right? And so like, you have to create those redundancies, because if something happens to you, the thing that you built starts to fall apart because it's dependent on you. And so the way I've done that,
and just to kind of paint that picture, the thing that happens to you just might be not necessarily being run over the bus, because we use that example in our organization all the time.
I like that example. Run over by a bus.
It's like, because the eyes start glazing. Well, that's true, but you may be distracted. You may have stuff going on in your family. And then a key priority, a gala, a big event, a big initiative, just the daily operations take a back seat to whatever else because you're driving the bus. So, it's you that's going off the rails. It's you hitting the program, so to speak. It just does, you got to be able to delegate it and build an organization that you are able to delegate it and have that plan. So going back to that book I was mentioning, is like having the position. So, all right, as I start this company, I got to be the marketing director. I got to be the operations person. But understanding what each of those positions entails so that one, you understand those pieces of the business that they need to be done.
Right.
I think that goes back to that lean canvas because all those pieces are there. But having the ability and having the job description already written up so that in the moment when you're ready, when the organization is ready, you can hire. Not only can you hire for that specific position, but because you've been working and understood the job description, you were able to tweak that and be prepared to hire that person. Because I think that's where so many people fall in their play. I don't want to hire somebody because they're not going to do it like I would do it. No, they're not going to do it like you would do it.
You're right.
Right. But are they going to do what your job description says?
Yeah, no, you're man, that is so, what you said is so important because as things, what I found was that as the Credo Conduit, the co-working space grew, like when it was smaller, like I could handle all those things, right? But as it grew, like the demand on me became increasingly more, and the other work that I had going on, I was sitting that to the side. I was like, I can't, like, this is consuming too much of my life, right? But I realized it's because I was putting myself in a position where I was unwilling to release control of it, right? And so I had to check myself. I said, okay, like, you're not, if this thing is, people are having a worse experience because you're choosing to hold on to this longer than you should. And so you want people to have the best experience and to maximize the value out of this. So you got to bring somebody on. And so then once I let somebody on, once I got there, which was a big leap for me, right? To say, okay, you can't be at the center of this. You got to let it go, right? The next thing I had to let go was, okay, it's micromanaging, right? So I bring her on, and I felt the tendency was to jump in when I saw that she wasn't doing things right. And the reality is, you're right. She's not going to do things the way that I do them. She's not. But that doesn't matter. What matters is that are we, through whatever process, are we getting to the point that we all agreed to get to? And if we're not doing that, then we're wrong. And then nobody wants to work for a micromanager, right? And so I am very conscious of making sure that I don't micromanage her. And if I do, I quickly apologize and correct for it, because I don't want to devalue her. I want to empower her. I feel a sense of responsibility for participating in the stewardship of her growing into the professional and the woman that she's destined to become. I feel a responsibility to participate well in that process, and so I don't want to micromanage her, and I want her. She needs to build confidence in her voice, and so I have to let her do the things she do. Now she knows if we don't hit the numbers that we were saying we were hitting, she has to come up with a reason. I may like those reasons and agree with her. I may not like those reasons, right? But I can't micromanage her, and I had to I have to constantly check myself.
Yeah, I think everybody struggles with how do I hold somebody? How do I allow freedom? How do I delegate responsibility? How do I hold somebody accountable?
Yeah. I mean, so it takes an individual, an entrepreneur has to be very aware constantly of not only of who they are and what they're dealing with. You got to be honest with yourself. Like my business is missing this component or is missing this expertise. So you got to go out there and get it. But that requires you to say, I'm weak in this area, right? I'm weak in this skill set. I'm weak in that skill set. The business is weak in this area. And so part of 90% of the job, I think, of being an entrepreneur to understand and reckon with your weaknesses and deficiencies, and then acknowledging them, calling them out loud, and then going through the process of correcting those weaknesses by bringing other people and other things around you, because you're not supposed to do it by yourself, right? And so it's a humility thing. And if you can't be humble as an entrepreneur, then I don't know. I mean, I guess there's some unicorns out there, people who aren't humble and still get success. But most people need other people, right, to operate their business. And most businesses go into the trash can because the business owner resists help because they feel like they know everything and their way is the right way.
I feel like there's two ways that, HR, people related issues, can tank a business. One is you just depend completely on yourself and you burn yourself out. Mm-hmm. Right. And then the other fail is hiring in an unwise manner. Right. So you just hire people, and then not only are they not helping you, but you're working to provide them work or working just to keep them involved in the organization. So it's a failure of delegation, failure to bring people on, or a failure to properly manage. And in both those situations, it's detrimental. And I've done both. I've not hired when I needed to. And I have hired folks, and I had them. There was at one point where I had several people working in the office and they're burning through cash, and there wasn't a real reason to have those specific people in the job, and I didn't have them properly placed and properly aligned. And so you can quickly go off the rails. So having that, again, I recommend that book, just along anybody that's these things that, you have this vision for what the company is supposed to look like, and you're hiring out those roles in a really developed manner. I want to leave you with the last word here. The hour's just flown by. I would love to have you back on, if you're open to it, to talk about the individual companies, maybe even bring in people from your teams.
That'd be fun.
There'd be a ton of value for folks from this, because each of the companies that we didn't even really talk about the Learn Jelly. I'm throwing that on the screen. The Learn Jelly. We didn't even talk about Learn Jelly. Company that you founded. So I know that there's just books of content that we can get into, and I look forward to bringing that to folks. And I look forward to personally developing more of a relationship with you. You're doing, like I said, you're who I want to be when I grow up. So,
I got this gray hair. I mean, I think that we're around because you said
listen. If that's the trade-off, that's okay. And you look stunning doing it. So, all right.
I was like, when you say you graduated in 97, I was like, oh, we're not that far apart. We're not
not at all. But I'm
a little older than you, but I'm not that much older than you.
I listen to Gary Vee and people that are like, oh man, I'm 42. People that are like 42, or they're 62, or they're 72, and they're like, I'm so old, I got nothing. Stop it. There's lots of opportunity, right? You can do whatever you want. You can pursue the passion, and you just gotta be passionate about it. And life is not over; it goes on. People are dealing with this pandemic right now, like we were talking about before. People are finding themselves in this. This is good stuff. This is a good time for you to readjust. Yes, it's a problematic time, and for Toth Event Staffing, we're not doing any events. My staff isn't receiving any income from the company. I'm not receiving any income from the company. But there's two ways to look at that too. One, oh, boo-hoo, the world is against me, or, I didn't build a business that was set up to do revenue in a lot of different ways.
Right.
So let me correct that.
I think
the perfect time to do that. So that's what I'm doing. Again, I want to build with you in a lot of different ways. Kyle, thank you for being on. I'm going to leave you with the last word. What do you want to leave folks with today?
What you just said is important, right? Like, I think that what my call would be to any individual who has been thinking about starting a business is like, this is the time to do it. Or people who are already in business, this is the time to do it, to do things that you really care about. But if you're going to do it, you need to be diligent about it. You need to use the right tools, surround yourself by the right people, because it's hard. And I'm just gonna be honest with you. It's hard work. And then the other thing is I would say is to be humble. I mean, you look for, you are weak in areas. Your business is going to be weak in areas. Like this pandemic is showing a lot of businesses that they're weak in certain areas. And so you can continue beating down the pathway of where you thought things were going, but it'll leave you dry. And so the humble person, the wise person will recognize that and look and try to figure out other opportunities where they can deliver value in a new way. And so be humble about the process and be okay with failing and iterating and innovating. I mean, that's all I really have to say. Like, surround yourself by good people, have fun doing the work, do the work that you care about, be humble, and just keep trying and just keep taking small steps, and you'll get there.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah, man.
Thank you so much for this.
This is fun, man. I really enjoyed this.
Good. I'm glad, man. Trying to provide value to people here, and
that's awesome, man.
So, thanks for doing this. I'm gonna play the theme song, and I'll see you tomorrow, everybody.
Okay.
Let's see if I can get it working now. Working my technology. Here we go. No,
you didn't have it.
It's going. I gotta work on my technology here. Song.
But you go good, dude. So this is great.
Stuff with the audio, you're putting different elements into it, and I'm learning every day. And one of the amazing things. I have no idea right now what's happening. All right, no theme song. I'll see everybody tomorrow. Thank you very much.